All right, everybody, welcome. Another Parsha class, and this one's going to be in sync with Hanukkah. So we're going to tie in the Parsha, Hanukkah, because Hanukkah's starting this week. So this week we're going to be discussing Parshas Vayeshev. Today is Tuesday. It's actually today's reading. It's one of the more disturbing stories in the Torah. The story of Joseph's sale by his own brothers. We always say, anytime you think your family is bad, let's look at the book of Genesis. We have some real sibling rivalry.
We have murder.
Everything. All right, so we'll start with a question for discussion. Usually you go on vacation to be with your family, to get away from it all. So imagine you have this couple on vacation with their kids. He is on the phone dealing with work. She's taking pictures of her food. The kids are
Beating up on each other.
Or they're on a TV. Are they on vacation? What's wrong with this picture?
Nothing.
Not a family.
As long as the kids are beating up on each other, it's perfectly fine.
All right.
It's all perspective.
Unfortunately, it's a picture of what our present society has in a family unit.
But now they're on vacation, so they're supposed to get away from what they normally.
That's the way.
So what's wrong with
What are
them?
they getting away from?
They're not on vacation. They're missing the point of vacation. They just took their daily activities and moved it from one borough to another zip code. That's basically what they did.
What I don't understand is why people insist on taking pictures of their food.
Oh, it's very important because sometimes food is artistic.
I could care less.
I
Yeah.
do.
I took some pictures of our food in Israel because I've never seen waffles like that before.
So whatever it is, people have to prove that you ate. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't.
Well, you can
All right, so
always
here-
show the results.
Exactly. No. Okay, Larry.
We're too
So that leads to the discussion. The question for discussion. I think it's on page 142, which is, what do you think the point of Torah study is, and what do you think missing the point would look like? Would look like?
Missing the point is their example of that family on vacation.
No, but now Torah study.
Yeah, Torah study.
The act
So
of Torah study.
what's the point of Torah study?
The point of Torah study is to understand the meanings of the words and as they're put together, the thoughts they're trying to
By the way,
convey.
Torah studies over here
learn
doesn't
to grow.
necessarily mean the written Torah. Means the broad Torah, written law, the oral law, the entirety of Torah. What's the point of?
To learn and to grow.
To improve
Yeah,
yourself.
exactly.
And so, what would be missing the point then?
Being
stay the same.
degraded.
It's B.
Degraded, what's the word?
What do you mean degraded and how?
To go down the
regress.
But the
road
kid-
and people will point and say, that guy there is a bum. You don't want that to happen.
Hey, wait. Stop using white.
Exactly.
No, I
That's-
think it's probably
How can you learn Torah? Put it this way: how can you learn Torah but miss the point of learning Torah? Not that you don't learn Torah and you're a bum.
Oh,
A person learns Torah
And
but
you can still
misses.
be a bum.
but
So how's that possible?
But still misses the point. Really bad teacher.
Thank you.
You
Duly
should- a
noted.
teacher- a
I'm
teacher-
leaving tomorrow.
A teacher should teach by example.
No, but if he's missing the point of Torah study, then it's not necessarily he doesn't understand. It's just, yeah, he's here, he's listening, but he's just not, he's not paying
He
attention.
doesn't see its application to him.
Yeah,
Okay.
that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Or if you don't, when you say missing the point, what does it look like? It looks like what the kids would say, they're plastic. You're plastic. Meaning
Plastic
you're
is malleable.
superficial.
Now that it's December, now every year Oxford votes in the word of the year.
Oh yeah.
The new word of the year. I think I was in the car with my daughter. A word called Riz.
Plastic.
You got Riz,
Spell it.
like
Respect.
R-A-S, like charisma. I think that's what they say.
Charisma.
I said, huh? And thank God I had a 17-year-old girl in the car. So she had She explained it to me.
Praise is charisma.
Yeah,
they
that's
think
the
that's
slang.
what they say. It comes from.
Yeah.
So let me tell you a story that explains the point of missing the point of learning Torah. So one day, on the door of the house of the wealthiest man in town, knocks a beggar, and he says, "Sir, I haven't eaten in 2 days. I'm starving. I'm gonna collapse. Could you please
Help.
give me some food?" So the guy says, "Obviously, you don't understand. So I don't allow poor people into my house. I support the synagogue. I support the soup kitchen. I support, but this is my private space. I don't give charity. You'll go to the synagogue. Someone will help you. Please, I'm mamish starving. I haven't eaten. I'm weak. Give me something." Says, "Man, do you not hear me, sir? There are many other institutions in the neighborhood." Says, "Please, just give me something to get there." So this guy doesn't want to leave. So what is it? He goes into the kitchen, and he finds, like, on the counter left out from last night was a piece of fish that someone forgot to put in the fridge. So he says, "I'm going to throw this out anyway. I'll give it to the poor man." So he gives it to the poor man, and then he comes. So then whatever, the poor man leaves. Next morning, comes home and tells his wife, "Honey, I'm going to be late for lunch because there's a poor man who got sick and he's in the hospital, and I have to do the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick." Then he comes home. When he comes home for lunch, he tells his wife. He said, "You remember that poor man? He passed away." So there's a mitzvah of accompanying the dead, right? Yeah, in the Levaya. So he says, "I'm going to." I have to do the mitzvah, so I'm going to be late for dinner. And then by dinner he tells his wife, "Tomorrow morning I'm going to be late for breakfast, because tomorrow morning I have to be menachem of all the family." So by breakfast, when they're eating, he tells his wife, "For one stinky piece of fish, I got 4 mitzvahs: tzedakah, Bikur Cholim, accompanying the dead, Levaya, and Nichem Avelim."
I just realized I've heard that joke before.
Right, but that personifies missing the point. You learn Torah, but you don't get it. You learn it, but you don't get it. Now, why are we talking about this? Because this week's parsha is a perfect example of people who didn't get it. So we all know that Yosef at 17 years old was Yaakov's favorite child, and Yosef would say bad things to his father, and it caused a lot of family strife. The brothers hated him; they didn't want to speak to him. So one day the brothers want to distance themselves. They first go to Dotan, and then they go to Shechem, and Yaakov wants to find out what's going on with the boys, what's going on with the sheep. So he sends Yosef, and the brothers, they say, "Oh, look who's come! Look who's come! Look at page 2. Page 143, but text 1a. Sorry. So when Yosef came close, they said, "We're going to show this guy." They took off his multicolored coat that Yosef famously had, and they threw him in a pit, and the pit didn't have water, and they sat down, and then they saw a caravan was coming by, and they sell him to the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites sold him, and eventually Yosef ends up in Egypt. Now, being that you've been to class, or you've watched the classes many times, you know that every word in the Torah, every phrase in the Torah is exact. The Torah doesn't tell us something we don't need. So which phrase over there seems extra, seems out of place, or doesn't seem to make sense? It came to pass when Joseph came to his brothers, and they stripped Joseph of his shirt, of the fine woolen coat that was upon him. And he took him and cast him into the pit. The pit was empty, there was no water. And they sat down to eat a meal, and they lifted their eyes and behold the caravan. You guys still haven't seen it?
There was no water in it?
Very good, Ira. And once you're telling me the pit was empty, obviously, there's no water.
There's no water in it, exactly.
Right, very good, Ira.
I'm not such a bug.
Candy for you.
Give him something now.
So
How
look-
about the squirt gun?
Exactly. So look at text B, text 1b. Sorry, Rashi says, quotes, says there was no water, but you know what there was? There was snakes and scorpions. So to inform us that they they didn't just throw him into a pit, they put him into a dangerous situation. Because I mean, just to go off the subject, I didn't want to get too into the story, into the details, because this story has a lot of details. They said, maybe we won't kill him. We'll put him in a situation, and the snakes and the scorpions will kill him, because they didn't want blood on their hands.
But by the same token, if the pit was empty, there were no snakes, there were no scorpion different.
By
definition
mind.
of empty.
No, because obviously there was something. When the Torah says there wasn't water, but there was something else. If you're right, if it would have just said the pit was empty, then you couldn't learn out there were snakes and scorpions. The fact that it says it was empty and had no water means it was empty of everything else, but something else, but this.
Well, it was never empty to begin with.
Right.
It's
It
supposed to
wasn't
be,
right full of air. So the question, so the Torah was trying to say that the pit had no water, or the pit had snakes and scorpions. And say they threw Joseph into the pit, and the pit was full of snakes or scorpions, either one. Or whatever, right? But you go like a roundabout way. Why hint? Just say it.
It
It
was
seems
to say the snakes were dangerous.
scorpion.
Some are, but the scorpions, yeah, they can give you a nasty rash.
Right. They can, yeah. So that's the question. So in order to understand this, we got to get into the theme of the class, which is learning it but not getting it. We know because we don't find a great condemnation, or we don't find that the brothers, I should rephrase that, we don't find that the brothers are looked down as idiots or brutes or murderers. The brothers were scholarly. They were great men. Yaakov treats them as such. So the rabbis learn out. Now this whole episode is studied a lot amongst commentaries. I mean, this is one of the greatest travesties in Jewish history. How could the 9 brothers sell Yosef? There were 12 brothers altogether, right? Yosef is the one being sold. You have to believe he wasn't in on it,
Yeah,
right? But Yaman was home,
he wasn't getting a piece.
right? He wasn't getting a piece of the pie. And Reuven wasn't there. It says he wasn't there because he came back. So the 9 brothers that sold Yosef. I mean, 2 took the lead. Shimon and Levi were the ones that really, Shimon and Levi actually wanted to kill him. Yehuda actually was the idea to sell him. So this is one of the greatest questions asked in the Torah. How could it be? How could men as great as the brothers, who were great men who founded the 12 tribes, they were holy men and they were knowledgeable men, how could they do such a thing? So one of the answers given, different commentaries give the very similar answer, is they had an halachic basis. They came to the conclusion based on learning. They thought that they were in the right for selling their brother. Why? We'll learn text 2 and text 3, but they kind of share a similar theme. And the theme was that Yosef posed either a physical or a spiritual threat to them. So I'll say it outside and then we'll go inside. If you look at the progress of the book of Genesis, Cain kills Abel. Right? Then Cain is rejected. And all of humanity comes from Seth. Then you have Avram, has Yitzchak and Ishmael. Ishmael is rejected, Yitzchak is the chosen one. Yitzchak has 2 children. Yaakov is chosen, Esav is rejected. So the brothers thought that Yosef thinks to himself that he's going to be the chosen, and they're going to be the rejected. Or maybe they were worried, maybe Yaakov thinks that. But they're saying, we aren't Ishmael, we're not Esav, we're not Cain. We're better. So we got to do is we got to move Yosef out of the picture to show that we're just as righteous. So that was their logic.
It seems like an oxymoron. we're going to get rid of him to show how we're righteous.
Oh, we're not to be rejected. How come I'm trying to get back here. Hold on. Oh, I know. See, when you don't do things yourself. So here, all right. Let's look at text number 2. Text number 2 is from the Severno. The Severno is a commentary on Torah. He also speaks on Mishnayos. Here we go. Better. Now I can go back. Okay. The Severno says the brothers thought that Joseph was liable to kill them, and he was now coming to inquire about their welfare, or perhaps he was going to cause them to sin, and God would curse them or punish them. Now, why was he trying to be liable to kill them? Because Joseph, one of the things we learn out, because they happened to Yosef. So it's interesting. Whatever Yosef told his father, and they weren't true, what Yosef did wrong was he perceived the situation, and instead of going to the brothers and say, hey, why are you doing this? And the brothers could have clarified, he made an assumption that they were involved in some pretty terrible sins. Instead of going over to them and saying, hey, explain yourself, he went to the father and said, hey, I saw them do all these terrible things. That was a part of the problem. And interesting, the exact things he accused his brothers of, happened to him. But you see in text number 3, the Orach Chaim expands on it, also a very, very similar thing. And he says that, last week's Parsha, Shechem and Chamor were wiped out by Shimon and Levi. They wiped out the entire city. So one of the things says, how could Shimon and Levi do that? According to the Torah, you can't do that. So it explains that before the giving of the Torah, the entire humanity was bound to the laws of the seven Noahide laws. And a violation, this actually is present day halacha, a violation of the 7 Noahide laws is punishable by capital punishment, by death. That was their justification. So if a person violates a woman, or harbors, or enables rape or assault, then that's also punishable. That was Shimon and Levi's logic. So they thought. So Yosef, was confused, was accusing the brothers of doing terrible things, including murder, including being with a woman that they weren't supposed to, and all these and serving idols. So now these are capital offenses. So the brothers thought to themselves, hey, now Yaakov's gonna pass judgment on us, and we're gonna be subject to the capital punishment. So we have the right to defend ourselves. They saw Yosef as an existential threat to their lives. So we have to remove Yosef from the picture. In fact, we find that the brothers really thought they were halachically okay. They didn't have a conclusion and didn't rationalize it. Sometimes when kids want something, right? My Mendy he loves to play soccer. So he wanted goalie gloves. So we ordered goalie gloves for him, right? Yes, me. Right? So they came, it was too small. So I said, okay, Mendy, we're going to return it. No, but Mendy, I want it. Yeah. I said, but Mendy doesn't fit in your hand. But he wanted it. The conclusion was he wanted it. So he started coming up with all these cockamamie logical reasons why he should keep it. No.
You didn't tell him you return it and get the next size
Yeah,
up?
but the next one wasn't going to be here, right? He had these in his hand.
At that minute, yeah, I understand.
You have to wait a week.
Gratification.
Right.
Instant, yep.
So sometimes we have a conclusion, and then we legitimize and we come to logical. This is not what happened with the brothers. The brothers didn't say, okay, we got to kill Yosef. Now let's come up with a reason. It's not what's happening here. They really thought. They weren't cold-blooded killers. They really thought that Yosef was a threat to them, physically, spiritually, and he deserved to be removed. And we see when they face Yosef later on, all the way later on, right? Yosef is appointed, leader of Egypt, and they meet him when he's 39. So this is all the way at the end when Yaakov dies. So let's see, Yaakov dies 17 years later. Okay, so 17 years later, look at text number 4. The brothers go to Yaakov and they to Yosef and they say, "Please forgive us. We thought that we were right and we were wrong. So our father said, to please forgive us." Now, if they were cold-blooded killers, how could he ask for forgiveness? No. What do you mean, try to kill me? But we find that Yosef treats them nicely, and the brothers and Yosef have a very nice relationship, and the brothers are asking forgiveness. Not so much what they tried to do, but how they went about it. So the question is, if they're following halacha, these were halachic observant Jews, and they looked into the book and they said, we come to the conclusion that it's okay to kill Yosef or sell Yosef, throw him in the pit with scorpions. How could they get it so wrong? Normally, if someone does something terrible and he's observant, what's your answer? That guy's not observant. Or that guy, he wasn't thinking about his observance at that moment.
Yeah.
Right? He lost himself.
Momentary lapse of reason.
Right, but here they utilize Torah to legitimize something doing terrible. But how? How do you get from point A to point B? It doesn't seem...
The long and winding road.
Right, so the question is, how can they be so off the mark? How can they miss the true halacha so badly?
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
That's true. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. But here they're following Torah. And with Torah is true. So how does they... So here we get into a very, very common problem. Sometimes you have people that are very into the minutia of the observance, and they're very into getting it right. But many times they forget whose Torah you're following. There's a great line, whose Torah you're following.
There's more than one Torah?
Well, yeah. There's God's Torah, and then there's your Torah. If you're following your Torah, then you can come to any conclusion you want.
Right.
You always got to remember it's God's Torah. There's a line I once heard from a rabbi. It's a great line. Many times when it comes to Passover. Passover is one of the holidays for fanatics, because you have to eradicate every bit of chametz. So fanatics are great with Passover, right? And Rosh Hashanah, what are you gonna do, right? Pesach is you cover your whole house with foil, right? Take a blowtorch and make an insurance claim. It's the whole thing, right?
People are going to think you're communicating.
You run naked through a car wash.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So what a rabbi once said, remember, dust isn't chametz, and your kids isn't the Pesach sacrifice. Something that the parents go crazy, and they enslave their kids. Just remember, right? But it's a very, very true line, because sometimes people get so caught up in the details, they forget what it's all about. So imagine you're very careful about Shabbos, right? And you want your Shabbos a beautiful table, right? Let's say the kid spills a cup, and you go crazy, and damn it, and you ruin the whole Shabbos table. Then what's the Shabbos table for? Shabbos table is to sit around to the family and enjoy. Sometimes we forget what it's about. Obviously, it's important to learn the Torah, and obviously, it's important to do the mitzvahs. But we always have to remember it's God's Torah, and therefore, you want to say something before we go on? Oh, okay.
I was going to say something, but she would have hit me in the ribs. So.
Barbara, hit him in the ribs. He deserves it. There you go. That's for the next comment.
It's the story about the snowblower.
No,
Exactly.
I was just going to say, when you said dust is not chametz, you think of the rule: if a dog won't eat it, it's not chametz.
Right. So I tell people, you don't have to clean your bathroom for Pesach. Don't blame God and start cleaning out your attic. That's not God's problem. That's a you problem, right? But meaning.
I know there are people out there that non-Jews that observe the Passover. I can't remember.
Spring cleaning.
Yeah, but the thing is, they'll clean the outside of the house too.
Yeah, sure. It's not Passover. Anyway, so anytime you learn Torah, you always have to remember that because it's Hashem's Torah, and this is a theme we're going to be spending a good chunk of time now, anytime you're learning Hashem's Torah, you always have to remember that God, and this is we're going to quote Tanya, which we learned a few times now, that God ultimately is beyond the capacity of any created being, be it human or angelic, to fully comprehend. He's beyond. So Hashem's Torah is as much as you understand, there's a lot more you don't understand. You see text 5a and 5b, the verses back it up. It says in Isaiah, do you not know, if you have not heard, an everlasting God, the Creator? He neither tires nor wearies. There's no fathoming his understanding. And actually, what we say on a fast day, Hashem tells Isaiah also, your thoughts are not my thoughts, my thoughts are not your thoughts. Your ways are not my ways. You can never fully understand. Not fully. You can't even get close. Actually, one of the questions that is asked is, how do we understand God's wisdom at all? If God is infinite and you're finite, there's absolutely no relationship between the finite and the infinite. How can we possibly try to understand Hashem's wisdom? And you're right. Mathematically, it doesn't make sense. The bee shouldn't fly. But what did Hashem do? Hashem did us a favor. He did us a favor, and he, so to speak, he squished and contracted some of his wisdom in order to be able to understand. But whatever we understand is a gift. You're not entitled to anything. It's a gift. So if, let's say God gave us 613 commandments. It's plausible. I know it's hard for us to fathom such a scenario because we live in this world that we do, but it's plausible that we would not be able to understand any of the commandments, including don't murder and don't kill, and we would still have to fulfill them because God said it would be right up there with kosher and the mikveh and whatever it is. But God, in his kindness, decided to do us a favor. And he said, you know something? I'll let you, hey Ron, and I'll let you understand. It's an absolute gift. That's why, if you look at the Gemara in the Darim, that when Moshe went up to Sinai to learn the Torah, he kept forgetting it. He tried to learn it. He would learn it once, and he'd forget it. And until finally God said, I'll give it as a gift. You might come and ask me, but Rabbi, you've said that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob learned Torah. Noach learned Torah. Everyone learned Torah. Moshe learned Torah. Right? They all learned Torah. So what do you mean they kept forgetting it? So the Rebbe points out, because before the giving at Sinai, the approach to God was through a human lens. Yes, they were limited. But now at the giving of Sinai, God imbued the infinity, the holiness, the divinity in Torah. And it was too much. So for a person to understand. That's why God had to bequeath it to Moshe his infinite wisdom as a gift. And this is why the Gemara in Tanya says, and this is something we spoke about in Tanya at length in chapter 5, and we're going to be quoting a few times chapter 5 in different places. This is why the Torah is compared to water. Because what's water? Water is the same water the top of Niagara Falls and the bottom of Niagara Falls. It's the same water. But the nature of water is to always find the lowest point. So look at what the Gemara says in text 7a, and then we're going to jump into the Alter Rebbe explanation in 7b, page 149 and 150. Rabbi Hanani ben Edi says, why is Torah likened to water? Because like Yeshaya says, whoever's thirsty, come drink. This verse comes to tell you, just as water leaves a high place to go to a low place, so too the Torah matters retained only by those who is lowly. Torah is going to find the lowest place. So only somebody keeps in mind it's God's Torah. That means you're humble. It's not me, I'm a great genius. No, it's Hashem's Torah. And you make yourself small. So the irony is, the smaller you make yourself, the more room there is for Hashem's Torah. Generally, by the way, taking the divine out of it, taking the religious part out of it. In general, the more you empty yourself, the more you make yourself small, the more you learn. A student, you're a teacher, you all identify. Student comes into class who knows everything, you can't learn.
Oh, it's true.
You have this wise guy, I know this, right? You can't learn. In order to learn, You have to humble yourself. You have to be in a state of I don't know. So and that's if you're learning from a mere mortal. When you're trying to understand supernal, infinite wisdom, you got to make yourself a zero. And this is what the Alter Rebbe says in text 7b. Well, let's learn. Hashem squeezed His infinite wisdom and desire into 613 mitzvahs and the various halachas and scripture midrashim. This way, the human soul would be able to understand and grasp the mitzvahs with her intellect and be able to observe them as much as possible in thought, speech, and action. Thereby, the Torah integrates into the human 10 emotional capacities as well the 3 external methods of thought, speech, and action. For this reason, the Torah is compared to water, because water descends from a high place to a low place. In the same way, the Torah descended from a lofty place, namely the desire for the will of Hashem, to this place. And Hashem is Torah one. So really, no intellect can understand it. That's why, and you've heard me say this before, Nachmanides warns us, the Ramban warns us, anytime you come up with a reason for a mitzvah, that's not the reason. It's a benefit. It's not the reason. Because sometimes, like for example, people will say today, oh, we don't have to do that anymore. The reason why they had that was because, no. The reason for the mitzvah is because God commanded. You understand that it suits you, good. And if it didn't suit you, also good. It's not, so it's time for a story. You know, one of the most favorite Chassidim in the past 100 years is Reb Mendel Futterfass. You've heard me say his name a bunch of times. So in an interview, they asked him. Someone asked him, "What were your best days?" He says, "My best days were my days in Siberia."
Days of what?
In Siberia, he was in Siberia for 17 years.
Lots of time to study.
So he said Siberia. So he said, well, how can that be? He didn't have to work. He says, work. Oh, we worked a lot. He says, part of my time there, I had to herd pigs. What do they call them? Flock or I don't know what.
A sty.
Sty.
A bunch of pigs.
Yeah, so he said I had to wake up 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, and I had to wake up 4 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we would come back to 6 o'clock at night, and it was so cold sometimes. He said the strap of my tefillin, they cracked. So they asked him. So he says, but
Later.
litter makes sense because they're a bunch of garbage. So he says, but my body was crushed. I couldn't feel anything. The only thing I could feel was my soul. So I used to daven by heart, and I used to learn by heart. So he used to learn. He said, learn? So he asked him, he had books? He said, books? You think the Russians are going to lie to have books? He said, prayer I knew by heart. He said, in learning, I would imagine myself when I was in Cheder and in the room, and I had Zalman on one side and Beryl on the other side, and we would talk, and the rabbi would look at us, and he would teach us, and I remember the lesson, and I would go over the lesson, and then the next day I would go over the next lesson. And in this way, I went over a lot of Talmud. But this is what it is. In order to learn Torah, you gotta make yourself small. You gotta get in touch more with the soul. You gotta make yourself worthy. In order to be worthy of Hashem's gift, you have to be humble. The more you're humble, the greater you are. It's not a coincidence that the Torah testifies about Moshe, that he was the most humble man to ever walk the face of the earth. And who was the greatest man ever? Moshe. Now we're in this month of December, so it's probably appropriate to say this joke. You guys notice one? This teacher in a class in a public school says, I'll give $10 to anyone who can tell me the most important and famous person ever. So one guy says, George Washington. Well, no, that's in America. He says, Napoleon. Everyone's screaming out, different people. And the teacher says, no. Finally, Goldstein, Jewish kid in the back, big chai, says, JC. So you're right. So here's the $10. when they're being dismissed to recess, teacher stops the kid and says, "I'm surprised that a kid Goldstein gave such an answer." He says, "Listen, between me and you, everybody knows it's Moses, but business is business."
You never knew that.
Right?
Oh, that's an old story.
So
But I didn't know it.
so Moses was the greatest. Why? Because he was so humble. And you see Avraham, when God's talking to him, he says, "I am dirt and ashes." And Yaakov says, "Hineni, I am here." The greatest of the greats are the ones that make themselves really small. And that's why at the end of the Amidah, there's a paragraph at the end of the Amidah after the last blessing. It's a little paragraph. It'd be right before Osei Shalom. And in it, we're saying that the nafshi, look at text number 8, it's there. The nafshi lakol akafar lakol tiyah. My soul should be like dust, and because my soul should be like dust, page 151, psach livi b'sarasecha. Open my heart to your Torah. So now it's all beginning to make sense. It's not just about learning Torah. It's your approach learning Torah. The approach is just as important to learning Torah as learning Torah itself. Thank you. You want to give the glass? Everyone says you're a better teacher than me.
Bring the flowers afterwards.
Okay. See. Generally on Tuesday I don't do anything wrong. She walks in one time. So now,
She didn't do anything wrong. She just gave you a task.
I just didn't do anything right. So now we can understand what the brothers did wrong. They were missing the idea of Torah. So you can go take a piece of Gemara, a piece of Torah, and legitimize anything, like selling your own brother. Imagine you came to a rabbi, and you said, "I have this idea." You ever heard of Purim Torahs?
No.
Purim Torahs. Purim is a day of dress up, enjoy. There's something called Purim Torahs, where people come up with these crazy ideas and they make comparisons. It's obviously a joke, because they make up with these crazy ideas and they compare things which have no basis in halacha, and it's fun on Purim. But what the brothers did was a Purim Torah. They used halacha to legitimize doing something terrible. Why? Because they forgot the spirit of Torah. They forgot it's Hashem's Torah.
It's like statistics in baseball. You can twist it to say anything you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, there's two types of lies, and one of them is statistics.
Right. Or 2/3, 2/3 of known facts are neither known nor facts.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Figures never lie, but liars always figure.
Yeah. So now we can understand. Now that we understand the importance of keeping in mind, it's God's Torah, and you've heard me say before that when I was a kid, our teachers would always demand from us before we learned, say, the Holy Torah says, the Holy Mishnah, the Holy Gemara, because if not, it becomes just a book. And you've heard me say before that we were not allowed to call any Judaic studies what subject. It's not a subject. It's a way of life. The teachers would always scream at us. We were not allowed to call Talmud or Chumash a subject. What subject are we learning now? To what are we learning now? No subject we get. He would reprimand us.
But that makes sense.
Yeah, now.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that makes, for the kind of study that you were doing, that does make sense.
Because Torah is not mathematics.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, because think about it. If the 1800s and 1900s have taught us anything, is you can use logic and science to legitimize anything. Eugenics. And overpopulation. I always joke about these people. The world's overpopulated. Okay, so get out. They're always trying to get rid of everyone else, right? Somehow the mathematics, doesn't make sense when it comes to. So now we can understand a very troubling idea in the Gemara. Because learning Torah is about connecting to God, right? When you learn Torah, right, it's a unification. It's actually part of divine service. It's a mitzvah to learn Torah. Therefore, you have to make a blessing before you learn Torah. Not only, it's one of the only blessings you should know, or it might be the only blessing, that's actually a biblical commandment. And we make it every day. The morning blessings, I believe it, 5 through 9, right? I think it's on page 9. You in the blessing, we say it when you get in Aliyah. Asher bach rabbanu mikolam, God chose us from the nations, and He gave us Torah, so His Torah. Baruch atah Hashem nosin Torah. Now, the interesting thing is that this blessing, or lack thereof, was the reason why the first temple was destroyed. A lot of people are familiar. Why was the second temple destroyed? Because of baseless hatred between people, between the Jewish in the Jewish community. Why was the first temple destroyed? Look at text 10a. The prophet Jeremiah talks about the destruction, or he says, "Whoa, who is the person so wise who can understand? Who is the person to whom the mouth of God has spoken? Let me declare it. Why is the land ruined and withered like a wilderness, without anyone passing through?" Just by the way, if you're reading this, there was no one there. Or in the Palestinians, you see? No one's there.
Yeah, okay.
The wilderness.
Yeah.
Historically, by the way, when the Jews weren't in Israel, the place was barren, wilderness, nothing. It's interesting. You know, when you choose to, I remember, you're gonna like this one. In 2004, the Red Sox finally won a World Series since 1918. So I remember a Red Sox fan came to me and said, "Hey, you see?" It's like, slow down, all right? You just won one since 1918, all right? The Yankees still have 27. Get in line, right? You got a long way to go, right? So if you choose a history from 1948, then things make sense. But you see Jeremiah, it's also backed up by Mark Twain.
Jeremiah was a Red Sox fan?
Probably not. He wouldn't have made it into the. He wouldn't have made it into the canon of the Bible, maybe Apocrypha. And God said, "It is because they have forsaken my law, which I have set before them, not hearkened to my voice, nor walked by it." So what does it mean? So what does it mean? They forsaken my law. So the Gemara says, what, all the Jews became not religious? So the Gemara points out, focus on the word my law, not the law. Torah C, my law. And look at text 10b. Amar Yehuda Marav. He says they didn't make the blessing before learning Torah. So they were religious. They were observant. Shabbos, kosher. They even learned Torah, but they didn't make a blessing. So now comes the question. That's why you destroy the temple and drive the people into exile into Babylonia in chains out by the rivers of Babylon, right? Because they didn't make a blessing? You couldn't think of anything more harsh to punish them for? So let's look at text number 11, the Bach. Right? He puts it very nice. He says, it's very puzzling. Why did the Jewish people receive such a harsh punishment for simply not reciting the blessing before Torah study? It's a minor infraction. Because he says like this, God's intention when He gave us a Torah is for us to be connected to Him. I am giving you my Torah. So the essence of our soul should be bound with the essence of the Torah, with its essential spiritual holy origin. When one studies with such intention, they become a container for godliness, inviting God into their existence. Such Torah studies serve as an active bond between the Jewish people, the holy temple, and the earthly temple. So it says in different places that how was the temple destroyed? If the temple was a holy place, how can someone destroy the temple? So it explains in Kabbalah that God removed the holiness from the temple. It became a regular building.
For rent.
For rent, exactly. Right? But the Jews abandoned this truth, studying Torah for material gain or pleasure, or to know how to engage in business, or to show off their knowledge. They wanted to show off, They abandoned the pursuit of connecting and becoming one with the sanctity of Torah and manifest God's presence in the world. Thereby, It created a rift, banishing God's presence from this world to a higher world. The earth remained coarse and banal without any sanctity. And this led to the destruction of the first temple. They abandoned the Torah, namely, they stopped studying it for the right reason. This is when they open a study session, they ceased making the blessing, and they ceased having the connection. It wasn't God's Torah anymore. It was social studies. Torah was one of the. And this is what we had. God chose us, and He gave us His Torah. We always have to remember the sanctity of the person, the sanctity of what you're, what a person's studying. So it's not that when you study Torah, a product thereof is going to be you're going to get a connection, right? So let's say, for example, flowers. A guy buys his wife, his girlfriend flowers. Why does he buy his wife and girlfriend flowers? Either he did something wrong, but what is he thinking? He's thinking connection. And the flowers are a means to the connection. You do something nice. That's not the Torah. You don't learn Torah in order to get something else from it. And God said, listen, do the Torah. No, the Torah is the connection. And we're going to learn in text 12, Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya chapter 5, the Torah comes from Hashem's wisdom. The closest connection you can have to another person is an intellectual one. Is to understand what they're understanding, to be on their playing field. So when you want the closest connection you have to God, to anyone, is through intellect. And we spoke about this in Tanya. Later on in the Tanya, Alter Rebbe talks about the difference between learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. Which is higher? Well, it depends how you look at it. A commandment requires the other person. So there's you. There's a advantage to it. But the unity by learning Torah, there's nothing greater. Because when you understand something, that idea that was previously God's divine idea, that divine idea is in your brain. And no matter what anyone does, it's in your brain. You can't separate it. Everything else they can separate, but since something's part of your brain, now when you think about it, it's an idea that's in God's wisdom. I mean, that's not something to be sneezed at. That's why Chassidus says before you daven and before you do a mitzvah, you have to think about what you're doing. Because what happens is we just go about, to quote one rabbi, historian, Beryl Wine, he came with a great line, it's possible for a person to be an observant religious person and never think about God. That's what happened in the first temple. They were religious people, never thought about God. And you're thinking to yourself, how could that be? Because you're not thinking about whose Torah you're doing. You got to stop. Like the story I told last week. Remember? The guy, when I was trying to explain to the guy why you learn before davening, I told the guy, I said, you have no idea who God is? He got all angry at me. So he said, well, you saying I don't believe in God? I said, of course you believe in God. You just have no idea who you believe in. If you want to appreciate what a mitzvah is, learning Torah, you got to learn Chassidus. You got to learn Tanya. It gives you an appreciation. Otherwise, you're in danger of just treating it as, I could be a bum and read ESPN, but I'll be intellectual. I'll read the New York Times, or I'll read the Talmud. The Talmud and the New York Times are not, on par with each other. Let's look at text number 12. See, when a person understands something, the brain grasps the idea and surrounds it from all sides. In turn, the brain is also submerged entirely within that idea. So before you understand it, the idea is hovers and surrounds the brain, so to speak. Once you understand the idea is embedded and submerged into the brain. So when a person properly understands the halacha, Mishnah, Gemara, their intellect grabs and surrounds that idea, and in turn, their intellect is also submerged within that idea. By doing so, they have grabbed and surrounded the wisdom and desire of God Himself, which no brain can truly grasp. This is remarkable and an unparalleled connection. This is the great quality of the mitzvah to study Torah. If you remember, I told the story of Zusha Vanapoli. Remember when he got thrown out of the study hall? I'm not sure which class it study. I said that story. Remember I told that story? I love you guys. You guys forget everything.
I'm an older person. I'm allowed to forget.
It sounds
No,
familiar.
it's like having a sponge. It soaks it all up, but then the temperature goes down and freezes and you can't get it out.
Yeah. if it would stay in, it was a good problem. The problem is it leaks out. So the Zusha
a sponge.
the Zusha of Anapoli was what they had to throw him once out of the shul because the teacher, the Maggid HaMedrash, was giving a class, and he started off the class based on a verse, and God spoke to Moses saying, and then it dawned on Reb Zusha, God spoke to Moses, and Moses understood it, and Moses was able to have like God infinite spoke to Moses finite, and they're like, yeah. Okay, so the rabbi started going, God spoke to Moses. Like the rabbi couldn't get past the first line. Finally, he said, listen, you don't let anyone learn. Take your idea, think about it outside, but think about it. God giving you the chance to understand His infinite wisdom. And you say the words, but it's crazy the way it is. So now it's getting late. So now let's tie it into the story of Yosef. The Torah wasn't wasting words. The Torah wasn't being poetic. When the Torah says there was no water, what's compared to water? The Torah.
The Torah.
They threw Yosef into the pit and there was no water. The reason why they did that was because they took the divinity out of Torah. There was no Torah. They thought it was Torah. They treated it as a scholarly debate. They lost the divinity. Let's look at what the Rebbe says. Explains in text number 13. The whole point of Torah is a connection, which is a direct result of your humility. As such, there is no middle ground. Either you're humble and you're committed to the Torah, and it's author the Eibishter, Hashem, and thereby you hit the right point. The Rebbe would always say, and Chassidus is a big fan of this. If your end point, your destination, or your result is bad, evil, then something's wrong with how you started. The Rebbe will say, for example, sometimes if the tree, when it's young, if there's a scratch in the seed or it's going off a little bit, in the beginning you might not notice it. But if you don't correct it, it's going to end up all the way. So because their whole approach was without the divine author, and then what happens is, as it says, as soon as the water, the commitment and the humility, which goes to the water going to the lowest place, is lacking, the student immediately loses connection with the Torah's author, and so automatically the snakes and the scorpions appear. Now it's one thing if a guy is an Amoritz. Amoritz, he's a ignoramus, unlearned. He doesn't know. So when he does something bad, it's not malicious. He doesn't have God. What's the biggest problem in the Middle East right now? The biggest problem is that these people who are killing other people, they're killing Israelis. They think God told them to do something. Is there anything more dangerous than that? If you're an unlearned person and you didn't know, I said, like the story with the old ladies in the car, right? They were going 80 miles an hour. Cop pulls them over. Says, "You're going 80." She says, "That you're way over the speed limit." Says, "That's the speed limit." I'm sorry. I thought the highway number was I-80. I thought it was the speed limit. He looks in the back. Those old ladies are shaking. So he says, "What's wrong with them?" We just get off the 112, right? Right. So when a person misses the so if a person's ignorant, then okay, they might do bad things, but not maliciously. When a person is scholarly, when a person is learned, but he's missing the secret ingredient, or the main ingredient, I should say, not secret, the main ingredient, which is the divinity of the Torah, then a person can utilize that learning to harm other people. And now let's tie it into Hanukkah. Now, what happened in the story of Hanukkah? In the story of Hanukkah, the Greeks don't have a problem with the Jews learning Torah. They don't even have a problem with the Jews being observant, or some parts of observance have a problem. So if you look at text 14a, I'll give you a hint. It's in the last two words of 14a. The key for what the problem is. Your Torah. What was the Greeks' problem? It says, stop treating the Torah as this above nature, because the Greeks worshipped really themselves. All the Greek gods, Venus and Hercules and Zeus are all super macho people, all beautiful people. They worshipped themselves. They worshipped human beings. So anything that was super rational, above human understanding, they couldn't withstand such a thing. They say, you want to do the Torah? No problem. It's a very, very logical book. You could learn it. You could learn the Gemara, and you see all it goes back and forth. But take the God out of it. That's why they didn't destroy the oil. What do? They opened the oil. They contaminated the oil. Because the idea of contamination, spiritual contamination, that's not logical. It's because a Gentile opened the jar of oil, now you can't use it for the temple service. That makes sense to you?
Yeah,
But think about
it's
it.
got cooties on it.
Get cooties, right? Doesn't make sense, right? So this is what the Friedrich Rebbe writes, explains text 14b. Previous Rebbe says the Greeks waged a spiritual war against the Jews. They weren't interested in genocide. Good word. Unfortunately, people today don't know what the word genocide means anymore, right? Like one Israeli woman said, these college kids don't even know how to spell the word. They know what it means. I should listen to them. But rather, the primary goal was to make the Jews abandon the Torah of God. The entire battle was aimed against the idea of the Torah being from God, as well as the idea of mitzvot being God's desire. They agreed that Torah was a wonderful, marvelous intellectual property. After all, the Greeks were big scholars themselves. Mathematics, philosophy, agriculture, and they were able to recognize the great wisdom contained in Torah's law. What they were opposed to was the notion that it was God's Torah, namely the sanctity of God and His wisdom. So now we can understand where the brothers went wrong, and now we can understand where the Greeks went wrong. You should know, in the times of the Greeks, a lot of Jews left. They say the Greeks, what's the big deal? But this is the problem. I'm going to say something a little controversial. You ready? It's going to be on tape, but
It's right there. You've got 3 minutes left.
What was the problem with early Zionism? Late 1800s, early 1900s Zionism. There was a fierce opposition from the religious community. What was the problem? Modern Zionism and old Zion and early Zionism is not the same. The problem was like this. Huh?
They tried to take Hashem out of it.
So what happened was they said the Jewish people will be a normal people. Rabbi Silverberg spoke about this on Sunday. If we have our own country. The problem is, the reason why there's so much anti-Semitism and persecution is because we have our own country. So it doesn't really make a difference what country we have. The country could be anywhere. Theodore Herzl wanted to accept part of Uganda for a state. But and that's why when they made the Declaration of Independence, they didn't put God in the Declaration of Independence. The United States has the word God. They refused to put the word God in the Declaration of Independence. But that was the issue. You can't take away, and this is why you should know. This is the problem why there's so much anger against Israel. The Rebbe said, stop beating around the bush. When you take the divinity out of the Jew, the land of Israel, then the UN and CNN and BBC, whatever it is, they all have a claim. What are you doing over here? But you go and you say, it's our land, because God gave us this land. It's our inheritance. Full stop. So there's nothing to talk about. When approaches like that, then your whole answer is formulated a different answer. We can never take the divinity out of the Holy Land. We can never take the divinity out of a Jew. We can never take the divinity out of the Torah. That's why those three are intricately connected. That's why so many mitzvot of the Torah are connected with the land of Israel. So the perfect scenario is Jew, Torah, a land of Israel. That's why you could be in the land of Israel, but still be in exile, because you don't have the completion of the Torah. One part of the puzzle is missing. It's not just about living in Israel. It's about doing the Torah. Okay. I hope we don't lose subscribers because it's kidding. All right, key points. Joseph's brothers threw him into the pit and had no water, but it did have snakes. Joseph's brothers were great people. They weren't outright killers. But they assumed, halachically, that they had a right to do it because Joseph was coming after them. Although they considered halacha, they were off the mark. How? Because they lacked the humility. They forgot it was God's Torah. God's Torah is infinite wisdom. It's only because He gifted it to us, because logically the finite should not be able to comprehend the infinite, but it was a gift in our limited minds. The best way to make space for that relationship is through humility and dedication. It doesn't mean you say you're a piece of dirt. You're finite, and really, I shouldn't be able to. But Baruch Hashem, God gave me this idea. The idea is reflected in the blessing we make for Torah study. The intellectual bond between Hashem and it is created through Torah study is the greatest connection, because it's all encompassing and consuming. It's a part of you. Appreciating this reality is critical to Torah study. To miss it is to miss the point of the entire Torah. And this is connected to Hanukkah because the Greeks tried to erase the divinity. And that's what they sought to take out, not the Torah, but the divinity of Torah. Questions, comments? Everyone have a Freilich in Hanukkah. Next week, we'll see. Next week's Tuesday. I mean, there's the concert. I don't know. Maybe we'll do middle of the day or something. No?